Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with Frobisher, because this week we watched Children of Earth, Day 1.
Written by Russell T. Davies.
Directed by Euros Lynn.
And it aired on July 6th, 2009.
We're awkwardly starting Season 3 of Torchwood, and the next week's episode that's being released after this one will be Revolution of the Daleks, and then we will return to Torchwood Season 3.
Right, but having watched this episode, I'm really okay with that because, this episode ramped up the suspense and ended with all these, threads that it started kind of just left, it threw many balls up in the air, and the longer it takes for us to see how it catches all of them, the more, hyped I'm going to get over time, I guess.
I honestly think it's kind of worse for us because we're going to watch episode 2 for next week and record it next week, but that episode won't go out till after Revolution of the Daleks. So,
yeah, but that's true.
For the people listening, they'll only be one episode deep into season 3 before Revolution of the Daleks just mucks everything up. We'll be 2 episodes deep. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm okay with that in a weird way, actually.
This episode was also probably made a lot better based on what we both watched before it, which was, oh God.
Can't believe you're about to... We consider ourselves a serious podcast, and what Keon's about to say on air throws that into question.
Yeah, so we do a movie trilogy podcast called Triple Play, a movie trilogy podcast. Check that out. And we watched the Beverly Hills Chihuahua trilogy.
Yeah, we record those episodes quite well in advance, so if you're wondering why that hasn't appeared in your feed yet, well, it probably won't for a while.
And because Triple Play is you're probably not subscribed to it. So.
That too.
But yeah, that was just sort of this god-awful, agglomeration of garbage.
But also, this season of Torchwood, we were talking about this before recording, is the most watched season of Torchwood. And I had the viewership numbers open, and I don't have them open at the moment. So let me just bring them back up again. So, So season 1 was on average between 1 and 2 million viewers per episode. Season 2 kind of wavered between 3 to 4 million. And season 3 basically never drops below 6 million.
Jesus.
Maxes out at about
spike.
Yeah, 6.76 million on episode 4 is the highest, but the lowest is only 6.14 million on episode 2. So, this is definitely the most watched season of Torchwood on average by a substantial amount.
And based on one random sentence I read on Wikipedia that kind of implies this entire season might have been why season 4 was even made. This might have been, I guess, the last one, or maybe this was sort of planned to be the last one or something. I don't know. That's just speculation on my part. But, Series 4 is obviously the American co-production. And that one I've heard kind of takes it in a different direction that not a lot of people liked.
Yeah, I think that, this season, I'm just reading, John Barrowman felt like the cut from 13 episodes to 5 was, quote, punishment from the BBC, unquote. So I don't think it was necessarily expected to perform very well, season 3.
They are longer, though. The episodes are an hour now instead of whatever they were before, 48 minutes or something.
Yeah, they're an hour long. It's 5 episodes, and they aired on consecutive days. So basically, it was just a 1-week run. So it was basically this is a lot more common now than it was in 2009, but like a mini-series, a 3-episode mini-series that tells one story over 3 very quickly released episodes. And that's, this is that 5 episodes, 1 hour each. Davies Russell T Davies, I'm reading here, also apparently allegedly stated that a surprised BBC controller rang to congratulate him because the time slot they put it in was usually considered like a graveyard slot. And this story, the 5-episode story, apparently received extremely positive reviews, as well as a BAFTA and a Saturn Award.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, just having watched the first episode, it's definitely one of the most exciting things that Torchwood has shown us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be really interesting because it's like a big alien invasion story, it seems like, but not involving the Doctor, just involving Torchwood unit to an extent, and this weird shadowy other government office that isn't exactly clear, I think, in this episode what they do.
Definitely, it feels like it's raising the stakes a lot. You know, it really feels like, it almost feels like, well, one, it feels deserved, I guess, after the first 2 seasons, but it also feels like sort of, I don't know, Torchwood the movie or something, right? Like where you have a couple seasons, then it all just kind of culminates in this sort of big thing, and then that's the last you ever see of you know, whatever it is you're talking about. But
yeah, and that's kind of why, and I'm sure we'll talk about this when we finish this season, this serial. Wikipedia refers to it as a serial. When we finish Children of Earth, I think that's something we'll talk about, whether or not this feels like it was supposed to be the Torchwood conclusion. I mean, the end of season 2 definitely felt like that could have been the end of Torchwood, right? Like, Torchwood could have ended with Exit Wounds, and I would have been fine with that, because it didn't really leave a lot of threads open, like what was the end of season 1 called? End of Days did. And I guess we'll see whether or not Children of Earth does the same on day 5.
Yeah, or week 5 for us, week 6, I guess.
So, guess we'll see. Guess we'll see. I think also this story takes place over just 5 days. So that's exciting? Question mark.
Yeah, I think they kind of lined it up there with how it actually aired.
Yeah. Damn. I'm just reading on the Wikipedia page the reception of the season, and this review that immediately popped out for what'll become an obvious reason, an unfavorable review commenting that, quote, Torchwood is the modern-day Blake 7. Ludicrous plot, hammy acting, an adolescent penchant for, quote, issues, unquote. This week's plot was plagiarized from 50s sci-fi classic The Midwich Cuckoos.
Okay, whoa, all right then. What was the phrase? Juvenile use of issues? Like, what does that mean?
An adolescent penchant for, quote, issues, unquote.
What the hell does that even mean?
I guess they're saying that, like, the approach to heavy issues, like this episode obviously deals with, like, homosexuality in some context, and parenting and so on and so forth, is like an adolescent approach to it.
But they're not really saying that, are they? They're saying that the entire use, they're not saying the approach is juvenile or adolescent. They're saying that, like, doing that is, right? If I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
I mean, that's actually one thing I was planning on talking about at the end, and will continue to plan talking about until the end, until we get there and I actually talk about it. But, like, I kind of like the direction, or I'm interested in seeing where they're going, because I think they're bringing up a lot of interesting things regarding the relationship between Ianto and Jack.
Mm-hmm. Did you just call them a couple? Gasp.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Yeah, no. I think this, if this episode is any indication for what the rest of the season is going to be, I think they're coming at this from a very interesting perspective.
Yeah, it definitely feels different than series 1 and 2. It feels like it's taking a new approach to the whole concept, even. of what Torchwood is, because in this episode, the government office is actively working against Torchwood, which brought me to propose, or I was going to propose, that our new replacement segment for The Ones We've Lost be, how did the government screw over Torchwood this week?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we can't really... We got teased with, it was going to be Rupesh. I was on board, like, yes, he's going to be a new member. It's going to be him. He's going to have his own segment now. But no, nope. It wasn't.
Nope.
But yeah, this is also the first time Torchwood has taken us out of Wales, I believe.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's definitely throwing Torchwood in at the deep end where they're facing like a worldwide problem. They kind of went there with Abaddon, being like, oh, Abaddon's going to destroy the world, but Abaddon never left Wales.
Never left Cardiff.
Yeah, that's also true. It didn't even leave Cardiff.
Yeah, and Gwen even mentions that later, during the episode where she's on the phone with Reese and she's like, entering England now, like, get ready for things to go to hell.
Yeah, I'll never see you again. Reese is like, you all up on your shots? Like you've got your vaccinations? So, I guess we should just dive into the plot then.
Yeah.
We begin with a flashback. Sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. It's Scotland 1965. It's a bunch of kids on a bus.
The wheels on the bus go round.
And it turns out they won an all-expenses-paid trip to Disneyland. No, that was Delta and the band. Sorry, I got the two confused for a second.
Was it Delta and the Bannerman?
Yeah, where they win the trip to Disneyland, but I don't remember why, but they couldn't. I don't remember why they couldn't go to Disneyland, but they ended
bus
up going,
broke down or something.
Yeah, something like that. They wind up at that motel in the middle of nowhere, or it was some sort of resort, but I don't know. Man, Delta and the Bannerman was, looking back, a really weird story rather. Like, this episode of Torchwood was great, I would say. But it was also very conventional. Like, looking back, it was surprising and it was exciting, but it was also like, it was, fairly by the numbers for, it had its exciting beats. It had the twists. It had the drama. Can't we go back to the days when Doctor Who had none of that, but was still just this wild ride because you never knew what was coming next?
Can we go back to a Doctor Who had none of that, but we still watched it for some reason?
I mean, I personally love the Chris Chibnall / Jodie Whittaker era. I think it's the best Doctor Who has ever been in its entirety. But still, episodes like the Saranga Conundrum kind of have that element to them.
That's okay. That's part of the reason why I love Saranga Conundrum is because it's like so unapologetically like. It's so unapologetically classic Who, where they explain nothing and you're just along for the ride for 45 minutes, and at the end of it you're like, great, the Doctor saved the day, but what did they save the day from? Heck if I know. It's like, what is the Krynoid? I don't know. Like, how did the Krynoid get here? Who knows? And that's interesting because that's something that Doctor Who in the modern era actually does a lot, where like everything about the alien of the week almost always. Midnight is one of the episodes where that's not true, but like, I don't know, think of the Slovene as the first one that comes to mind. That's a throwaway villain that appears once and then once more because they needed something to fill that slot. And like in the instant in their one episode, we know they came to Earth because their ship ran out of fuel. That's why they're here. They have like motivation. They're trying to get home, etc., etc., etc. And we know that about almost every serial or story specific villain, like in modern Who. And in classic Who, that was like, it never concerned itself with any of that.
No, it didn't. And yeah, it's the new series is definitely a little overwrought in certain places, I guess. And like, maybe there's something, maybe that's subconsciously, I guess, why I personally like the, what this new era is, and maybe other people like it for the same reason, is like it says everything that it shouldn't and like nothing that it should, like yeah, like
Yeah.
like yeah, I don't know where to go with that idea, but maybe I will in the future.
Yeah. I mean, but getting back to Torchwood a little bit, I definitely think that this season is also going like, in my personal opinion, some of my favorite episodes of Torchwood are the ones where they're like, and these are especially the PJ Hammond ones, where Jack and the team are like, we don't know what we just fought. We don't know how we won, but we did. And that's it. Like from Out of the Rain, it was like, we don't even know what these beings are. We just know they live in the film. And this episode is very much like there are people who know what the villain is, and it's almost more mysterious for that fact, but we as the audience don't know anything about their motivation. Jack and the team have no freaking clue what the heck is going on. Like, I'm really excited to see where this season goes, because for the first time in quite a while, and the Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who did this too. Like, for the first time in a while, I just genuinely don't know where the story's going to go. And I mean, that's how I feel about Doctor Who now too, after the Timeless Children. Is like, I genuinely don't know like where this is going to go from here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure for this season it's going to get explained one way or the other by the end.
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
there's going to be
Probably.
at least one scene within the next 4 episodes where you just get sat down and talked to and explained the hell out of, someone's going to explain the hell out of what's going on here.
Yeah, but for now, we're not there.
No, because we're still at the beginning. So these kids on the bus get taken to a sort of bright light, and obviously it's some alien activity or whatever. And that's all you get of
Yeah,
that.
and that's it. Yeah, that's all we get at the beginning, flashback kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to modern day, and Gwen's like withdrawing money from the bank, and she sees some woman who's like, hey, come on, like, I don't know what the kid's name, but I'll just call him Tommy. Like, hey, come on, like, let's go. Like, stop playing now. Like, why aren't you moving? And we see like someone else on the street, and then we see Reese like honking his horn, like, get out of the road because all the kids have frozen. And then we see Peter Capaldi's John Frobisher, not to be confused with the shape-shifting penguin, Frobisher, going to work and being completely oblivious that his two daughters have also frozen. And I was like, all right, nice. So we're getting right into it, right into the story, right off the top.
Right. And we even see a couple scenes of some kids at home, I guess, getting ready for school, and they're all frozen too. And some of these scenes come back later on, which I really like how they did. You don't, because you think it's just sort of this montage of random, people in their homes. And for the most part it is, but two of them come back later on.
Yeah, no, this episode, part of the reason why I like this is because it's like really well edited. It doesn't feel like there's any scene that's a throwaway. All the scenes that appear in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes tie into something later on in the episode somehow. Like seeing, like at first glance, it might seem weird to see John Frobisher leaving his house to go to work. Like, why wouldn't we just see him come into work? But that's because later on we find out that he, knowing he has daughters is important to knowing like how he reacts to this threat to children.
Yeah. But then that stops after a while. The kids just start moving again, and everyone's like, well, that was weird.
Yeah, so Gwen goes to check this out, and Ianto and Jack are nowhere to be found. And it turns out they're at a hospital pretending to be like the neighbors of someone who died on the operating table.
Right. So they, by doing that, they get a moment alone with him, and they extract like this alien symbiote. And the one of the doctors happens to see this, and he's just like, what?
You're saying he's an alien? What?
What? Okay, and then again, Torchwood continues with the just throwing this sort of, I don't know, coin up in the air, where Heads is like, yeah, people know what Torchwood is, and Tails is like, nobody knows what Torchwood is, and it never catches that coin. It just never comes down.
Well, The this is really interesting because I thought that too for this scene, and I was like, oh, okay, this is another like who knows about Torchwood, and Rupesh even says later on when he encounters them outside of the Torchwood HQ, they're like, how do you even know about Torchwood? I think he says it later, or maybe he says it now. He's like, how do you even know about Torchwood? And he says like everybody talks about you, but then later on you find out he was like a plant who was supposed to go undercover. So then that opens the question up even more, like who knows about Torchwood, because he only knows about Torchwood necessarily because he's been told about Torchwood because his job is to infiltrate Torchwood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at first glance, it's like, yeah, okay, he just knows about Torchwood and who knows about Torchwood and what the heck. But then it's like, oh, wait, he knows about Torchwood because he was told about Torchwood because that's his job. But then who are these people who know about Torchwood? And like, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it does, whatever, on purpose or otherwise, it does kind of play with that whole thing, that we definitely touched on many times in series 1 and 2 where, yeah, we didn't know what Torchwood's place was in this society.
Yeah, I mean, and this like the character of Apesh knowing or not knowing almost seems like Russell T kind of throwing a wink wink and a nudge nudge to the audience, like, I know that we don't necessarily know who knows or who doesn't know. So here's a character who like knows because everybody, he claims he knows because everybody talks about Torchwood, but then actually he only knows because someone told him. So does everybody know about Torchwood? I don't know.
Right. So he's desperately trying to get into Torchwood. And at this point in the episode, you're definitely, at least I was, and I feel like probably most people watching would think the same. You're definitely tricked into like thinking, all right, he's going to be, Owen's replacement. I mean, he's a doctor. He desperately wants to be part of Torchwood. He seems ready to investigate. He's probably going to be a new member.
And also at the end, or yeah, through the second half of series 2, really playing up the fact that Owen's a doctor, and then the first person we see who like knows about Torchwood being a doctor, like that also combines to make you think like, okay, he's going to be the new doctor for Torchwood. Jack even says as much when they get back to the hub, him and Ianto, and they're like, we need a doctor.
Mm-hmm. All of this is also interspersed with scenes of another new character, Lois, who is, now having watched the episode in its entirety, more obviously going to be a new member. So kind of also another hint there.
Yeah, she mentions she's like a secretary for Frobisher, like the new secretary for Frobisher. Mm-hmm. My Amazon X-Ray fun fact of the week, which I'm still continuing to do till we finish Torchwood probably, basically mentions that her character was born out of the fact that Freema Ageman, we never really found out how to pronounce her last name. We're quality podcasters.
3 years.
Basically, Torchwood Season 3 hadn't been approved yet or greenlit, and she got cast in Law & Order UK, and then they greenlit Torchwood, so she had a choice, and she chose Law & Order UK because that was a 13-episode season, and this was only 5 episodes. That's what Russell T claims is like that was the thing, was that we were like basically we were too slow to get greenlit to get her on, so I had to rewrite basically Martha's role in the story into this character of Lois, and I made her more naive and so on and so forth,
right?
Because she doesn't know about aliens yet.
Yeah. So back in the hub, Ianto and Jack get back. Gwen is sort of doing some homework on what's been going on with, the kids and stuff. But Ianto and Jack, this is where we're first kind of introduced. It was in the hospital scene too, where they kind of just have some playful banter. But here it's like the episode, I think, makes it more obvious that like the whole relationship between Ianto and Jack is, going to be examined in like a more serious light, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely seems like it's going to be one of the themes of the season. Especially because right off the bat, Ianto's being weird about like being called a couple. Not weird. Weird's not the term. He's just like bringing it up. He's like, well, they called us a couple too. And Jack's like, yeah, so what? Like, we're together. So what? And it kind of seems like later on when he visits his sister that that's going to be examined from the aspect of like Ianto's never had like a relationship with a man before. And so this is all new to him.
Right.
So Gwen sees Rupesh outside and she's like, well, now my job is recruitment officer. So she goes out to talk with him. Because she says something to like Ianto and Jack where she's like, oh, you basically did to him what you did to me, which was like to see if he would come and find us, right? And they're like, they don't answer. They're just like, So she goes to talk to him, and he reveals that like since aliens have been revealed to like be real to the human race over the course of the past couple years, I think this is supposed to take place not long after, even though it aired about a year to a year and a half after season 2. I think it takes place not long after, because it kind of seems like the death of Tosh and Owen is still somewhat recent. Maybe not like a week ago recent, but like within the past 3 or 4 months recent.
The next day.
The next day. That would suck for the Torchwood team.
Yeah, there is. I think when Gwen first enters the hub, she has a little picture of Tosh and Ianto, and she kind of just taps it or something like that. So.
Yeah, so Rupesh reveals that suicide rates have doubled since aliens have been revealed to be real. This also, it makes me think that maybe like religion is going to be one of the themes of this season, because Rupesh mentions that someone he knew personally killed herself, and in her suicide note, or took her own life, I should say, in her suicide note, she wrote, it's, quote, it's like science has won, unquote, because she was a very religious person and she couldn't reconcile the existence of aliens with her religious beliefs.
Yeah, or like belief is going to be maybe a big thing. This is always weird to me, this whole argument, not just within Torchwood, but also just like in life of like, yeah, science invalidates religion, and like, or vice versa. Like you can't, have both. That's always been weird to me because like, it's not like they both use the same methods, like it would be this is something I've kind of always thought about. Like, it would be one thing if like religion used the scientific method and came up with like, yeah, Genesis, that happened. But it doesn't. It just uses a completely different method, which is just like, I don't know, storytelling or belief or whatever. So like, I don't know. The two have never seemed incompatible to me.
I agree. I don't think they're incompatible, but I think that the presence of this character in the story is not the story or Russell T or anyone involved in the story saying that they're incompatible.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's necessary. Like the story is going to examine some people who think it is incompatible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just wanted to say that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I've never understood the argument that they're incompatible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're bringing up a good point. Like, that's kind of a pet peeve of mine that I think people do too much. Is like if a character in a story says something, like people are so quick to jump the gun of like, oh man, the show's promoting, whatever it is.
Right.
When it's just a single character in the story just speaking their own mind doesn't necessarily, mean that that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Anyway, it starts happening again. There's a kid nearby, and she freezes, and Gwen is like, oh no, oh god, oh no. And so you see now, kids, the country and I guess world over have stopped again, and now they start screaming. Just this ear-piercing, just, I don't know, deafening. Not to us as the viewers, but it's what it kind of is in the universe, I guess.
Yeah, it's like ungodly screaming.
And then they start sort of...
well, they start speaking.
Yeah, they start speaking.
But first they keep repeating the word we, and then we will. I think it's we will. Did I get this right? Oh, no, we are. Sorry. I've got the message written here. We are.
Yeah, we are coming.
And then they say, we are coming. And they just keep saying, we are coming. And then they stop. And then the kids are like, wow, that was fun. During this montage of kids doing this, we also see an older gentleman also doing it at like some sort of care home. It's not clear because we see it from the outside, it's not clear what kind of institution this is yet.
Yeah, but the implication of this scene at this point in the episode is pretty clear, and it's it's surprising, and it's like, oh man, what's going to happen next? Because at this point we know that it's only kids doing it, and then it throws a wrench into that with this old man.
Yeah, so my interpretation immediately, I guess at first glance, was like, oh, so it's only maybe people whose brain hasn't fully developed who are doing it. Like it's going to be something where the alien message can only be received by brains that aren't fully developed, you know?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Um, that's not the case, or it might still be the case. I don't actually know. But from all evidence we see in the episode, that's not the case.
Right. I forgot that like all schools in Britain have uniforms. Which like some of them are just like a sweater, but some of them are like a full on, like shirt and tie, and like, man, that would suck.
Yeah, when I lived in South Africa, I haven't mentioned that in dozens of episodes on the podcast that I'm from South Africa. But when I lived in South Africa, I went to a private school and we had a uniform that we had to wear every day.
Yeah, did they all have the uniforms there though? Because private schools here too, some of them do have uniforms, but none of the public schools do. You're actually not allowed to, I think, initiate or implement uniforms in public schools.
Yeah, I actually think it's not allowed in public schools. I'm trying to think now in South Africa. The only two schools I know about, I went to an all-boys school also, like a Catholic school. I'm trying to think if the public schools in South Africa have a uniform or not. But I never knew anyone at a public school, so I don't know. Maybe I'll ask my parents, I guess. They'll know.
Yeah. But yeah, the kids snap out of it and they're just like, no, they don't even, they have no recollection of what they've done. They just kind of keep on playing or whatever. So Torchwood then, using their, countrywide surveillance systems, which haven't been a point in a while, but, was sort of a reminder like, oh man, oh yeah, Torchwood is just like, committing, or not committing, but like, they're just, surveilling everyone in like a very kind of creepy way.
Well, this was really interesting, and I actually kind of like this because we're concurrently with this, we're seeing a unit general who's meeting with Frobisher. I'm sure they said Frobisher's position like in the government at some point in this episode, and I just missed it. But yeah, I'm sure it'll come up later on in a bigger role. He can meet with the prime minister, so he's some sort of public servant. But the unit general says like there are only two organizations in the whole world who have the technology to like collate the information like we are, because the unit general's presenting to Frobisher that kids all around the world and not just in the UK stopped at that moment and screamed and so on and so forth. So he says that only two organizations in the whole world have computing power and resources to put together the information in the way that he has, and it's UNIT and Torchwood.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing, it seems like this season is going to very interestingly maybe, but heavily play up the differences and similarities between UNIT and Torchwood. To me, that like from this episode, that's what I got.
Right. And they even hinted at stuff like that with, Tasha's backstory, making UNIT the sort of villains there. So, well, we'll have to see, I guess, what happens.
We'll have to see.
But for the first time, Torchwood, like we mentioned before, takes us out of Wales and into England, because Gwen goes to meet with the guy they find on the footage submitted to the police of the old man.
Yeah, because someone recorded it.
Yeah.
A little weird. Well, because Ianto also was recording one of the kids who was screaming. We're also forgetting the most hilarious scene in the whole episode in my mind, which was Jack turning to Ianto and Gwen and being like, someone find me a bloody child. Because he wants to run some tests to see, because he says, like, if we can get a kid, then we can isolate the frequency that people or the aliens are using to communicate with them.
That's a very interesting line, too, and it's what I want to touch on more on at the end, because there's a lot of back and forth dialogue in this episode between Jack and Ianto about, like, having children And it's always this sort of double entendre, or have you pronounced that moment? Especially
double entendre.
Yeah, where like that's one instance, the one you mentioned, the one at the end where Jack's like, Ianto, come here, we're having a baby, and he's just like, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I'll talk about it more at the end.
Yeah, well, that's also why now, while Gwen is going to meet the older man, Jack goes to someone he knows, and it's not revealed immediately, to see if he can borrow their kid. And Ianto also goes to someone who has a kid, and it's also not immediately obvious who it is. It's revealed that Jack is visiting his daughter, who we've never heard about, and Ianto is visiting his sister.
Right. This is another instance, I think, of what you touched on before of this episode's editing. I don't know. It all plays out really well. It kind of, it builds a little bit of mystery there, where you don't know who they are, and it's revealed through dialogue that all feels very, I guess, natural and, conversational. I liked it. I like this entire sequence personally.
Yeah, I think it's done really well because it's not like he meets or they go to see these people and then it's immediately some sort of like line that's like, oh, my sister, it's so good to see you.
Right, right.
It plays out very naturally, like how you would expect if you actually went to go see your sister, how it would weave into the conversation later on, be like, brother, I've always cared about you or whatever,
Yeah. So Jack wants to, he doesn't say this directly, but he wants to use his grandson to kind of help figure out what's going on. If, in some capacity, even if it's not like experimenting on him, but then, his daughter, whose name I forgot, I don't know if they even mentioned it. I'm sure she had a name, but...
Sure, her name in... Let me see if I can find it on this page that I'm on.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the TARDIS wiki.
Oh, Alice Carter.
Yeah, Alice, she's like, no way, Dad. They kind of go into their backstory about, like, how uncomfortable she feels that he doesn't age and how she's going to outlive him and her son's going to outlive him and stuff like that. She's divorced, or she, or something like that. The father of Jack's grandson is like, he's kind of off somewhere else, I guess.
Yeah, and I think she also says something about how, like, her mom was pissed off at Jack as well, and she understands now because she's like, you don't age, and that's just like, you make all of us feel old.
Right. She also had, this is probably just, coincidental or like, but it's sort of this visual thing, cue as well, of like, she has a very similar hairstyle to Susan.
Yeah, so. I think that's just a visual thing, but...
Yeah, interesting, but yeah, there's nothing too much to say about that, I think. Maybe if there were some other similarities, it would be like, oh, well, what's going on here? But no, I think it's just random, similar hairstyle. Just... But Ianto is also, as we mentioned before, he's visiting his sister, and this is a more interesting scene, in my opinion. Because his sister, I forget what she saw him, or she saw someone told her about this.
I think I think it's her friend told her.
Yeah, she saw Ianto with Jack at dinner or something like that, in some sort of fancy restaurant. And Ianto first tries to play it off like, he's my boss, like, and she's just like this is the first hint you get of like of I guess Ianto's current family life, of like, she says like, it's fine, like, you can tell us, we're not gonna judge, or like, we're not gonna tell anyone, we're not gonna judge you. And he's just like, yeah, fine, like, all right, sure. And he reveals that he's in this relationship with Jack, and as soon as he does that, she goes like, oh, or something like that.
Oh, well, then as soon as he says that, also, I think her husband comes in and is like, so, Ianto, I hear you're taking it up the arse now. And I'm like, yeah. Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
So she's obviously told as many people as possible. And Ianto says, like, he doesn't even really know what any of this is, which is why he's kind of been secretive about it. Because apparently we learned that, he's never, he's never had this relationship before, like with a man or anything. So,
Yeah, he also says, like, it's not all men. It's like, it's him, meaning Jack.
yeah.
So it's all a very new experience for Ianto.
Right. What's also a new experience, maybe not for them, we don't know, we don't have enough information to know, but what's a new experience for us is seeing the Torchwood van get stolen. Which it does. Another instance of, I think on point editing here, right? This time in the, in terms of sound editing, is like you hear the siren far before it's brought up in the dialogue, and I think it gets a little louder over the course of the scene.
Yeah.
Ianto's like, there's no way it could be stolen. And then the husband guy's like, then what's that alarm? And you go like, oh yeah, there has been an alarm playing for the last 20 seconds.
Yeah, because he says it can't be stolen because it's got a triple deadlock. And then that's obviously these kids stole it.
Yeah, villa style, just check out.
I mean, this episode is like, in a way, a soft reboot of Torchwood, because by the end of the episode, we haven't, none of the real Torchwood. What's the word I'm looking for? None of the Torchwood staples. The hub gets blown up at the end of the episode. Spoilers. The car is stolen. Ianto and Gwen are basically like on the run. Jack's in a million pieces.
Right, so sort of a destruction of all that Torchwood had been over the course of series 1 and 2. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, structurally too, right? It's like this. It's serialized now. It's the entire airing structure of the show has changed. There's not. We don't even have the theme. We have the ending close credits theme, but we don't have the beginning. Torchwood isn't planning on being ready anymore, and they like they were in season 1, and they aren't ready anymore like they were in season 2. Everything's changed. Everything changes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be a reference to like this Children of Earth event being what was his name in Fragments, what he saw that caused him to like kill the Torchwood team and be like, everything changes in the 21st century and you got to be ready.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see them bringing up that line again, just because they incorporated it into the show in that scene. Yeah, I could totally see that this being related to that.
I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So Gwen meets this guy, and his name is Tom White, I think.
It was Tim White, I believe.
Tim White?
Something like that.
Something white. Something white.
Yeah.
If I'd looked him up for Britain's 10 actors, I would have it in front of me, but I didn't. He was not who I looked up for this. Great.
Yeah, I didn't look anyone on this because I finished it like 10 minutes before we started recording. So
I only looked up Alice and Mr. Decker because Mr. Decker, for some reason, seems like he's going to be a big character. And I would look up Peter Capaldi, but we've already, like... He's the most obvious person to look up.
Yeah, I would have... Yeah, this is great, saying who I would have looked up if I actually did what I was supposed to do. I would have looked up Rupesh and Lois, for sure.
Yeah, probably should have done that. I should have done that, but I didn't. Yeah, I think it's like Tom White or something, Tim White, something like that. And he's, you find out later that's a fake name anyway.
Yeah. He was...
Because his actual name is shoot. Don't even have...
It's
Tim White. Yeah, I've got it here. Tim White is his fake name. His real name is Clement McDonald.
Right. And the reason why he was taken into this institution is because his like mind was utterly destroyed by the aliens that he saw. He was on that bus, 40 years ago, 45 years ago then, 55 now.
Yeah.
And Gwen sort of teases that out of him. He has this weird like speech tick or something. And I thought this was going to go in a completely different direction because what he does is he turns to his right all the time and goes like shh, shh or something like that. And I thought there was going to be like some invisible alien like standing right next to him or something.
He's also got a weird tick where he smells
Yeah,
things.
his this isn't like in the episode, but what I kind of gleaned from it was like his encounter with aliens like really heightened his sense of smell for some reason.
Yeah, like that was some sort of gift he was bestowed by his encounter with the
Yeah, and
aliens.
we'll have to see like where that if that comes into play. If like maybe they're heightening people's sense of smell for some reason, or maybe they're giving someone heightened sense, or maybe they're giving people heightened senses in general, or they're imbuing them with these sort of abilities or something, or maybe it'll never come up again. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was just born with like a really good sense of smell, enough to smell a feel like not a fetus because it's only 3. I don't know when it's considered a fetus.
It's
Is
3
3 weeks a
weeks.
fetus or is it a
Well,
zygote?
I don't know. I
I
don't
don't know.
know. He can smell that she's pregnant. He can
Yes.
also smell whether or not she's lying.
Yeah. So, oh man, he can even smell non-tangible things.
I mean, I think there is evidence that when you lie, that, you know, there are biological changes that happen. That's what like a lie detector test is based on. But um, it just so happens that those biological things that happen, like with a lie detector test, you have to think harder about a lie than you do about the truth. And that increases like electromagnetic pulses. But the other thing is that like you can beat that by intentionally overthinking during the baseline test, so that your lies just look like the baseline. So it just so happens that the things that happen when you lie also happen when you do other things as well. So,
But anyway, Gwen deactivates the camera that they're using to watch them, and that's when he sort of reveals his past, how he was, he had this alien encounter, and he's been using a fake name ever since.
because he doesn't want to get caught. Unfortunately, Gwen coming to find him gets him caught because the government agency recognizes Torchwood looking for him. Meanwhile, while this is all going on, and I'm just realizing how much they actually packed into this 1 hour long episode, Frobisher meets with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister, I think the Prime Minister, maybe it was the Home Secretary, who's like,
It was a prime minister.
and he basically says, look, I didn't hear anything. You didn't come to me. You have a blank page and it's on you. And whatever happens next is on you and I don't want to know about it. Which then, like, Frobisher goes to his main secretary and he's like, here's what you need to do, and gives her a folder, and she opens it and it's just a blank page. And I have a note here that's like, how would you ever set up, whenever you have coded communications, you have to set up the coded communication. How would you ever like set up with your secretary, like, okay, if I give you a blank page, that's a kill order for all of these 5 people? Because meanwhile,
Lois is hacked in.
Yeah.
Well, not hacked, but used the password and username that were sticky noted to the side of the monitor.
Well, like the other secretary, this was to me pretty weird because Lois is being all like shady. She's like, "Oh, I'm logging in and I shouldn't be, and I'm looking for stuff on Torchwood," because Jack calls the office and is like, "Tell Frobisher it's Torchwood," and she doesn't end up telling him. And she's like being all shady, but like the other secretary gave her the login and is like, look, you might need to get into the system to do some things during this whole thing. So if you do, here's my login. Like, here you go. She just gives it to her. And then she acts all shady like she shouldn't have it for some reason. And I'm like, but she gave it to you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she logged into something that she shouldn't have, yet the password and username were exactly the same. I don't know.
Security.
Well, maybe this is sort of a lesson, that the episode teaches you. Like, 1, don't use the same password for everything, and 2, don't put that password, like, on a sticky note on the side of the monitor. Well, that was a nervous laugh. Is that hitting some real life, points in your life?
Oh, I've never put my my thing on sticky note. I've never put any of my like login information on sticky notes.
Okay. Glad that you've confirm that you haven't done half of that entire statement.
I used to have sticky notes on my wall above my laptop, like with things I needed to remember. But then, like, my wall got really messy, so I stopped doing that. I just started writing notes like in my computer instead.
Yeah, like conspiracy wall. Like, anyway, she finds the order to kill a bunch of people, including Jack.
And that's the last we see of Lois this episode.
And the last we're probably ever going to see her. No.
She was never to be seen again.
Meanwhile, Gwen relays the information about McDonald, and
right.
And Ianto runs a search on McDonald, and because Torchwood themselves is being surveilled, that's how the government agency picks up on like, oh, Torchwood like knows about this guy. They found him.
Yeah, they pick up on it because he gives Gwen his real name, because she's like, look, if something happened, it would have been written down somewhere, but I'm going to need your name to find it. And he gives it to her. And when they search that name in the Torchwood computer system, that like alerts whoever this government agency is.
Right. So meanwhile, I forget exactly what this is, but Jack, I think it's called in by Rupesh for some this like thing that he thinks is related to aliens. Some guy died.
Yeah, because Rupesh told Jack about these bodies that were missing. 5 bodies in 2 months, I think, from the morgue that just vanished. None of them are white. And he tells Jack that... Yeah, this was a little confusing to me, because he just tells Jack that someone died. They came in with a nosebleed, and all of a sudden it was a brain hemorrhage and he died. And he's Chinese, and this piques Jack's interest for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know. But he goes in regardless, and as he's investigating the body, Rupesh just shoots him.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming at all.
No, neither did I. And as soon as that happens, some, troops come in. They're like, all right, good job here, or whatever.
Yeah, don't know who this shadowy agency is, but somehow they're more shadowy than Torchwood.
Maybe it's Shadow, the agency from... I think it's UFO.
It's the Happiness Patrol.
Yeah, oh my god.
But they're clearly executing the kill order on Jack. Trying to, because Rupesh is like, do you think it's true, like, that he doesn't die? And then at that moment, Jack goes,
yeah, and he just gets shot immediately right then. The woman in charge of all this hints that Rupesh is, like, going to be no longer needed. And he's like, no longer needed, but what do you mean? And she just doesn't answer, and he's like, oh no. Oh god. And he tries to run away, but she just shoots him. His death is very, brutal too. It's just like you can see the impact and how he gets sent flying a couple feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They cut Jack open while he's dead, put something inside of him and close him up. We don't see what it is. Then they just put Rupesh's body next to Jack's, and when Jack wakes up, he assumes that Rupesh was killed by the same person who killed him.
I guess,
and he goes back to Torchwood. Gwen just scanned herself to confirm that she's pregnant, and she's like, pregnant.
We skipped over the scene before, too, with Reese checking out some house or something. Kind of, so Gwen and Reese are moving out of their apartment, and they're trying to buy a house, I guess.
Yeah, they're moving up in the world.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss that set, honestly.
Yeah. Rip that set, I guess. Never to be seen again. Yeah. Oh no. Devastating.
Wonder how many people stopped watching Torchwood because of that set,
I bet I could count on 2 hands.
Yeah, it's just not Torchwood anymore.
That's the set they're gonna miss. That's not Torchwood anymore.
Not the hub. Screw the hub. Which that's what happens right now. Actually, is the hub just gets totally screwed. This is the scene actually where Jack walks in and he learns that Gwen is pregnant, and then this is where he goes like, Ianto, we're having a baby. Ianto goes, what? And he comes in, he's like, yeah, Gwen's having a baby. And he's just like, oh.
They also catch the bomb inside Jack by sheer chance because Jack accidentally puts his hand like on the hand scanner that Gwen was using, and then it's like alert, alert, bomb.
Well, it's this moment where like Gwen has her hand on the thing, and she doesn't know what to feel about her being pregnant. In that scene earlier with Reese, there's also like Reese jokes about like, yeah, maybe it'll be like, I think Gwen says like it's a big place for like just two people, and Reese goes like, yeah, maybe it'll be three soon or something along those lines, something sort of cliche like that. And this is where Gwen doesn't know how to feel about now learning that she's pregnant, and Jack tries to console her, putting his hand on hers, and that's when the scanner like picks up the bomb.
Then Jack's like, you guys gotta go. And they're like, but we don't wanna. And he's like, go. And they're like, you're gonna be blown to smithereens. And he's like, I'll come back. I always do. I cannot die.
So they run away.
And boom. Kaboom. Just in
Boomtown.
It's gone.
That episode took place in Cardiff, didn't it? Boomtown?
Yeah, it did actually. You're right. Wow. Wow.
That was the episode that introduced the Rift, I think, to Doctor Who in lore in its entirety.
It did because that was the episode that he stopped in Cardiff to refuel. That was why he was there.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
It all comes full circle. Not really. This is not like really related in any way. But yeah, definitely a lot of balls in the air up at once at this point. And we'll have to see whether, juggling ensues or just like, droppage. Maybe it's more apt to call them eggs and not balls. Because, they might just splatter all over the floor. Who knows?
Yeah, don't count your eggs before they crack.
I don't know. I think based on what we've heard of this season and, like, the quality of this episode, which seems better than what we had before, although not to say series 1 and 2 were bad, this just seems, I don't know, it just feels like a step up. I think we're going to be in for a good, next 4 episodes.
Yeah, this episode dealt with and introduced a lot of interesting themes that I think will be expanded over the next couple weeks. But I'm really interested to see how they're going to play out in this Torchwood framework. It's going to be interesting to see, like, how does Torchwood rebuild after having everything stripped from them? They're basically on the run now. I mean, they're fugitives now, essentially. We know they want Jack dead. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to imagine they want Gwen and Ianto dead too. And by they, I mean this weird, shadowy organization.
Yeah, they either want all of them dead or they want Jack dead and literally don't care about the collateral because they were willing to blow up the hub and everyone in it to kill Jack at least, if not all 3 of them.
Right. I mean, I'm also curious to learn, like, who is this shadowy organization? I have a note, like, when Rapesh is like realizes he's going to be killed. I have a note that's like, lol, that's why you never get involved with shadowy government organizations because they just kill you if they don't need you. Like, who's gonna take him to task? Who's gonna put them in jail? No one, because they're the government. So, also, I have a note about the bomb that says, damn, would be really great if we had Owen here to use the like singularity scalpel right now.
Yeah,
to get
the
bomb out of Jack.
True enough, yeah. Gwen has a little device, the one she uses to deactivate the camera, and she just is like, in technical terms, it's a gizmo. Like, that's also kind of a break from what we had before, because, like, Series 1 and 2 Torchwood definitely would have, been like, this is, blank, whatever it is. But this time around, it's like, no, this is not what we're really concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The human aspect is a lot more important in this story.
Yeah, or even you could look at it like the big picture now is more important too, because like we're getting this other government agency, we're getting like the whole world instead of just Cardiff, and it's like we don't have time to deal with like the minutia and the little, this little instrument that we're using. We have a lot more important stuff on our plate, like as a show.
I was gonna say we forgot the most important cliffhanger of the episode, which is that the kids start saying this phrase again, but now instead of just saying "we are coming," they say "we are coming back," and that's a big cliffhanger. It's like, oh shoot, they've been here before.
Yeah, that was creepy to me. I'll admit, like I didn't really, I wasn't creeped out by anything before this, but like yeah, when they say we're coming back, I was just like, oh man, it's kind of a goosebumps moment.
Yeah, I mean it's very well done too because the message builds over the episode, right? Like when it first appears, it's just we are coming, and you think it's done because "we are coming" is a complete statement, but then it's like "we are coming back," and it's like, oh shoot. Yeah, a lot of interesting things set up.
Yeah, and like I've been touching on for the whole episode, this this season definitely seems like it's going to take a different approach to the relationship between Ianto and Jack. I mean, weirdly enough, last season name dropped Christopher Isherwood, who obviously Christopher Isherwood wrote like a ton of books. I don't know how many novels he wrote. I think it was like 40 or something like that. But the only one that I've read from him was called, oh man, I forgot what it's called, but it's related to this entire concept where it's, man, what is it called? I think it's just, oh, it was A Single Man. That's what it was called, and it took place also over the course of a single day. So like kind of similar to this, taking place over a week or 5 days. And that story kind of dealt with some of the same things that this one does. About like the main character in that story is a gay man who thinks a lot about like the fact that he's never going to have children. Also the fact that his partner cheated on him with a woman and then died, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I mean, again, like there's so many parts of this episode where it's like Jack and Ianto like covertly talk about like children, and Ianto is in this sort of thing for the first time, right? He as we learned from his sister had never had this relationship with another man, so maybe what's on his mind, and the whole season is Children of Earth, so maybe what's on his mind is like another take on that of like, yeah, if this thing continues with Jack, maybe Ianto has always wanted kids or something, but then he's realizing that like, yeah, if this thing with Jack is like for real, then that's not going to happen,
Yeah, I mean they could always adopt.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. There's a line in this episode too about adoption. It's between, I forget exactly what it was, but it's between Gwen and Reese. Wow. Yeah, really hammering it home here. Russell T, who wrote this, and I'm guessing wrote all of them. I think it's the same writer and director across all of them, Rosalind and Russell.
So I was just looking at that while we were talking, because I know we had worth questioning that, and he didn't write all the episodes. Episode 2, I think he didn't write, and I think he co-wrote. I think he wrote episodes 1, 3, and 4, and he co-wrote episode 5. And episode 2 just wasn't written by him at all, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of an interesting approach because Russell T obviously is gay. And I feel like I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about what I'm about to say, but like I'm going to do it anyway. So here we go. Like, okay, I don't know. It feels like, the past 2 seasons didn't really deal with like any complications that might have arisen between Jack and Ianto's relationship. And, obviously the whole like, and like in a way it felt like, that was sort of, I guess, this show's take or Russell T's take, although Russell T obviously didn't write, majority of any of the episodes in series 1 and 2, just wrote, a few of them, I believe. But like, yeah, I mean, it felt like sort of validating, right? Of like, yeah, there's these two, this more so in season 2, because that's when it really happened. But like, yeah, it's just like, it's this thing that just happens and yeah, it's cool. But like here, they're really, obviously the idea now is not to like invalidate it, but like it's dealing with, I think, more realistic, complications that might arise, especially if you're like Ianto and you had never telegraphed to anyone that you're bisexual, and then all of a sudden everyone knows. So it's no longer this like happy, and that's true actually, I think, for the whole episode. Like it's no longer this like these like happy-go-lucky adventures, which yeah, there's a lot of death and destruction before, but I don't know, just tonally it wasn't the same as this. except in maybe like Meat or a few episodes like that. I don't know.
I think that yeah, I think I agree, and I think that part of that is like the gravity of everything feels a lot more. Everything feels a lot more real now that Tosh and Owen have like died. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like there's no going back. Like the stakes are real now,
Mm-hmm.
in every aspect of their life. Like bringing it back around to how you're saying, like for Yanto, this is a new experience being in a relationship with a man. Like what I like about Torchwood is that it doesn't treat that like as a trivial problem. It basically this episode places that on the same level of importance to Ianto and Jack as like the children are being used for aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like it feels very grounded and real because like in real life that would be, as far as I know, that would be like a big deal for him. That's like his entire life is changing now. And yeah, okay, the world's ending, but like that doesn't make this any less important. And I like that this episode and potentially this season slash story are going to be treating these very human problems like on equal footing with the big alien invasion story, which Torchwood has always tried to do, but without the like, consequences can be rewritten as long as they're done well. So without when they killed off Susie, it was like, okay, so consequences are real. But then they brought back Susie, and then they killed Owen when they brought him back. So it started to feel like we were getting back into this rut where things didn't really matter, you know? And now that it kind of feels like we're getting back to that norm where everything's important and it matters again.
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
I was also going to say that this season kind of reminds me of 42, where 42 was like, took place almost in real time. It also reminds me of like 24, where each episode it's a 24 episode season and each episode covers like a 1 hour span. So this season is 5 episodes. It basically covers 5 days. And I always think that's an interesting like narrative conceit that you can only really do in that way in like TV or movies to an extent. Like a book, it's never really going to be real time, and a book that's like it covers 5 days straight is just like, okay, it's just a story that takes place over 5 days. But with a TV show it's like 5 episodes, 5 days, that's unique in the television space. Not as unique now because it's been done multiple times, like I said, 24, 42, etc. But it's not common.
Yeah, and maybe obviously we aren't going to experience this, but like maybe that has something to do with the more realistic and grounded, like I guess, tone and stuff that's going on. Of like, it almost makes it seem like a news report or something, right? Because you like go to work or you go to school or like whatever you do, and you come home and you're like, oh, let's see what happened to Gwen and Yonto and Jack today, and you do that for 5 days straight. So like it's almost like you're turning on the news or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of like a TV show that you could do that would be kind of like that. That'd be really interesting. That's like news from an alternate universe. Like you structure it like a news show, and every day you tune in, and it's like what happened in this other timeline for 5 days.
Right.
Neat. Neat. Yeah, but I mean, I think I'm going to have more to talk about as we go on through the season slash story.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is my way of saying I don't have anything else to talk about for this specific episode.
Oh yeah.
But I do have 2 of Britain's 10 actors in this story. Pull up my notes. So I looked up Lucy Cohu, who played Alice. She's been in a lot of stuff. Broadchurch, Inspector Lewis, Midsummer Murders, Marple, The Bill, Casualty, Poirot, and a movie I've actually watched called Gosford Park, Gosford Park is a really interesting movie because it feels like you need to watch it 3 times to actually understand what the heck's going on.
Best kind of movie. Best kind of anything, actually.
It's made by Robert Altman, who... let me just Google this to make sure I get this right. I believe either he or someone who worked on Gosford Park was inspired by that movie and went on to create or work on Downton Abbey.
Huh.
Because that movie is basically like... It's basically like a murder mystery in a British estate home. Huge ensemble cast. Lots of familial relationships that, like I said, it kind of feels like you have to watch it 3 or 4 times to understand what's going on.
Lots of
very well done, though.
Lots of eggs up in the air, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's really well done because it's also one of those movies that you get to the end and when everything is revealed, you're kind of like, damn, I want to go back and rewatch it to see if like there are clues that I missed throughout the whole movie. Anyway.
Yeah, like one of those usual suspects, like where it's at the end, you're like, oh my god, I have to rewatch this like right now.
It's I don't know. I found it to be a really good like murder mystery because you watch it and it's when you watch a murder mystery, you want it to be so that you as the audience can figure out who it was and figure everything out, but you don't want it to feel like it's easy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You want it to be just like, right. Like that sweet spot of like, you can figure it out, but you're not going to maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And this movie was like right in that sweet spot. If you like picked up on all the little dialogue clues, you could figure it out by the end, but it's not like too easy. Anyway, that's enough about Gosford Park. Also looked up Ian Gelder, who played Mr. Decker. He's been in Casualty, Game of Thrones. He had a recurring role on a Robin Hood TV show, Holby City, The Bill, Poirot, Absolutely Fabulous, and Doctor Who. Actually, he played interestingly the Chris Chibnall era specifically, because he was the voice of the Revenants in The Saranga Conundrum, and he played Zelen, the old man immortal in Can You Hear Me, in the most recent season.
Huh? Wow.
So that's interesting. And those are the only 2 people I looked up. Probably should have looked up Rupesh because he dies in this episode. But I didn't really think about it.
I'll look him up. If I remember, I'll look him up next week.
So I actually have an email this week, but we also have to ignore Ianto, done, 7 Deadly Sins of Gwen. I didn't really have him committing many sins.
Yeah, I didn't have any. This is a new and improved Gwen.
Yeah, it was actually kind of interesting. Gwen in this episode did feel like almost absolved, if you know what I'm saying.
I didn't feel that it was portraying her as absolved. I kind of felt that she maybe had taken what happened and like maybe Tosh and Owen's. Oh my God, Ianto is such a nobody in our eyes that Owen dies and we're like, yeah, Ianto, he died. Like. No, I thought that she kind of maybe took Tosh and Owen's death as like this, oh, I really need to get my life together type thing, and she kind of just got her stuff together and with Torchwood and with Reese, and yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. She definitely took the deaths hard and took them to heart. And like I said, I'd like to nominate our new segment for this season to be How Did the Government Screw Over Torchwood This Week? Because it seems like that's going to be a recurring theme for the next 5 episodes.
Yeah, for sure.
And on that note, I think the government screws over Torchwood by trying to kill Jack and blowing up the hub this week.
Yeah, and to put it more broadly, like the whole thing of the Prime Minister being like, you know what? You were never here. I don't want to know what's happening. So, yeah.
And I thought that was, I thought that was great. And by great, I mean I'm really curious to know what they're going to do with that because who are these people? So that's all of the segments. I've got an email to read this week from someone who's never communicated with the show before, which is very exciting.
Nice.
Okay, the subject line is Torchwood. Hi guys, loved your Torchwood Season 2 podcasts. The increase in the consistency of stories from Season 1 to Season 2, thinking back on it, is quite weird with how much the difference really is, because I can't think of a story in Season 2 that I thought was subpar. My personal favorite episodes of Season 2 are Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Adam, Adrift, and Fragments. It was interesting hearing about how much you enjoyed from Out of the Rain, because that is actually my least favorite of the season. Also, just a factoid that you might find interesting is that on Archive of Our Own, Jack Harkness / Eonto Jones have the same amount of fics as Rose Tyler / 10th Doctor, the most popular Who pairing. Literally one fic difference when I looked it up, which I found rather odd considering the viewership of both shows and the fact that Doctor Who is still currently airing and Torchwood's final episode was in 2011. Looking forward to your Season 3 podcasts as the series is in my personal top 5 favorite individual seasons of shows. Thanks, Eleanor.
Yeah, that's interesting, and maybe that just goes to like show you that now in this season, like the show is going to be taking that relationship a lot more seriously to the point where even now it has as much, staying power as the 10th Doctor, or sorry, the 9th Doctor and Rose, or 10th as well, I guess. But I don't know. When people talk about that romantic pairing, I just immediately go to 9 and not 10 and Series 2 and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, but that's the popular one because it's got David Tennant and he's, the young hip not kid, but he's young and hip.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about that before, but yeah, from the romantic point of view and just from the general point of view, 1 is superior to 2 in my opinion. Series 1 is superior.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
Series 2.
I agree. It'll be interesting to hear if Eleanor has any thoughts because when we got this email, our episode on Exit Wounds hadn't gone out yet, and in that we talk about how good Season 2 was and how it was really like a consistent hit after hit, especially from Adam to the end of the season. That was like, after Adam, I think, was what we said, was hit after hit all the way to the end of the season. And yeah, Season 2, in my opinion, is better than Season 1. We mentioned this last week. Just say it again in response to this email. So definitely looking forward to Season 3, though. Definitely looking forward to Season 3 and hope to hear from you some more, Eleanor. Always good to hear from people. It's also always good to hear from people who are in different parts of the fandom, like the interesting fact about Archive of Our Own. Obviously, I'm not looking at Doctor Who fan fiction, so I would have never known that. So
Your loss. There's some good ones out there.
Hope to... I'm sure there is. But I hope to hear from Eleanor again. And thank you for reaching out. It's good to hear from our listeners.
Yeah. Thanks. There's no comments, no Facebook comments, no Twitter comments or anything either. So, not that I'd read on the episode. Yeah, there were some Twitter comments, but they were just sort of banter and jokes and all the responses to the stuff that I put on there. So,
well, there you go then. If there's anyone who'd like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@executivevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Torchwood Season 3. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts, except Amazon, who still haven't emailed me back, at Trust Your Doctor, Doctor Who Podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching Revolution of the Daleks. But until then, the end.